This is the 22nd of August, 2012, and today Michele Hill, am going to interview Marcella Boyd-Cox. Earl is taking care of the camera. And we're so pleased to be here today. We want to thank you so very much for signing the consent form, agreeing to do this interview for the Voicing in Action project, which is a collaboration between Case Western Reserve University and the Social Justice Institute.
This is wonderful. Thank you so much, Shelley, for considering me and Earl considering me to be interviewed. I'm just very proud to be a part of this.
Well, good. Thank you so much. Now, tell me about yourself, Marcella, and the history of your family.
Well, let's see, where do I get started? Well, I was a resident of Cleveland. My family, I was born and raised in Cleveland, Ohio. And I have an older brother and sister. My sister is about 10 years older than I am, my brother 13. So I was the baby of the family. And virtually, pretty much came up as an only child almost, because my brother and sister were out of the house by the time I really got a real awareness of having siblings. So my grandfather, who started the business, both of my grandparents were from Southern Ohio. They came up in Urbana, Ohio. I've never been there, and my dad still talks about he wants to visit there, but I have never been. And my grandfather came to Cleveland, I think, in the late 1800s, and he was a clerk and a waiter for some time, even tended horses for some time, for some rich family. Lived above the barn. I lived above the barn in the barn, and wound up deciding he wanted to go into the funeral business because that was one of the few professions that were open to black men at the time. So he got his license from Clark's College of Embalming in Springfield, Ohio, and then took the exam in 1905. He passed. We don't know exactly when he passed that year, but then he wound up opening his own office along with a partner. He had a partner named Lewis Dean, and they went into the business in 1905, and then for some reason they parted ways, and my grandfather moved on, and they opened up a place at 26th and Central, and then moved from there to another address on Central. And my grandfather stayed there. Actually, he had a haberdashery. They had a haberdashery in part of the funeral home, and the funeral home on the other side. I know it's kind of wild that they did that, but yeah, it turned out to be successful. My grandfather was very involved in church. He was very involved in St. John's AME Church down on 40th in Cedar, and very involved there. And he married my grandmother, Cora, in I think it was 1911, and they lived above the funeral home. And then my dad was born in 1915, and his sister, my aunt Lucille, was born in 1917. And they were a normal family, very, very church bound. People around the turn of the century, everybody went to church. They were in church all day long. My dad was really, really involved in St. John, and even to this day, he'll tell you that he loves the relationships that he built there.
Wow, that church has a lot of history. And
yeah, I think it's the oldest African American Episcopal church in Cleveland. I think it is. And
it was also part of the Underground Railroad.
Oh, yeah, that's true. I did hear that, yeah. So I was born in 1954. Oh my goodness. And born again in Cleveland. My parents we were living in the Glenville area at the time. And I wound up going to Cleveland schools. My brother and my sister graduated from Glenville. I didn't finish Glenville. My parents had moved to East Cleveland by the time I got in high school. So I finished at Lutheran High School East.
Which is where we met.
Yes, Shelley, and all your sisters and your family and your mom and parents. And I went there for my junior and senior year. And really loved Lutheran East. I had visited there my 10th grade, my year of 10th grade, and I really loved it there. But, kind of stepping back, I went to Miles Standish, which is now Michael White Elementary School. Left there and I went to Collinwood, major work at Collinwood. I transferred, for junior high school. And then I left there and went to prep school for a year. Boy, that was an experience. It was so hard being away from home. It was one of my first experiences being away from home. It was a very grueling year for me. And so I wound up coming home a lot on the weekends and during the holidays and visiting a friend who was going to Lutheran East. And that's how I got introduced to Lutheran East. And I loved it so much that I said, oh no, I'm coming back and, I'm going to go to Lutheran East. And I loved it. I really did. I love Lutheran East. And, everything is pretty cool. By the time I was 16, we moved to East Cleveland, lived in Forest Hills, and, I walked to school every day.
Okay. Did you live on the Cleveland Heights part of Forest
No, I
Hills,
lived
or
in East Cleveland.
East Cleveland?
Yeah, I lived in East Cleveland.
Okay.
Right.
Um, Now, a lot of African Americans who live in the East Cleveland area, or Cleveland area for that matter, don't send their children to prep school. So what was the name of the prep school? Where was it located?
The name was Emma Willard, and it was in Troy, New York. And at the time, when I was coming up at that time, I was going to Collinwood, and opportunity was afforded to a lot of kids at that time to go away to school. A lot of black kids were going away to Andover and Exeter, going to a lot of the prep schools. And so I had girlfriends and her sister who wound up going away, and they were living across town and over by Kennedy. And their parents sent them, and so I said, yay, I'm going to jump in there. I'm going to try it too. Well, it wasn't a good match for me. It was a very eye-opening experience. It was not far from Albany, New York, and I was home every month. Every month, I was so, and I was really the baby. I was really like tied to my mom's apron strings, and I was just really. It was a really very grueling year for me. It was a very eye-opening experience. Nice to get away, nice to see things, but it was even nicer to get home. And I can remember that year just crying every time I had to go back to school. And my mom was like, no, you're going. I don't care. My dad said, you're going. We put this money into it. You're going for the year. You're going to try it for the year. And I made it was an all-girls school.
What was the racial mixture?
Oh, man, there were just a handful of blacks. They're a very small handful. I can't even remember how. I mean, there were some, I was a 10th grader. There were some seniors, some juniors, and one of my girlfriends was the freshman. But there was a very small number of us. And a huge school. It must have been 300-400 girls. So, yeah.
So what was it like for you living in, in a household with older siblings? Can you remember what that was like?
Again, I was so much younger. My brother and my sister were so far. By the time I was 8, my sister was 18. My brother was in college. He had gone away to college. He went to University of Michigan for a while. No, Michigan State for a while, and then he finished at Fisk. And my sister moved out the house when she was 18 and got married. So, I was just the baby. I spent a lot of time. The time that my dad couldn't spend with my brother and sister because he was developing the business. Well, by the time I was of age, he was able to spend a lot of time with me. And I had a lot of friends. We were going to the Fairfax Recreation Center. I'll never forget they had family night on Fridays. And we used to go every Friday. I'd take my girlfriends, load them up in the car, and we'd go, and my dad would take, and we'd swim and have, the best time in the pool. Oh, I can still remember times. And friends that I had then that I grew up with at church. We went to Mount Zion Congregational Church over in, Wade Oval area. And my dad was a member of Antioch, but my mom was a member of Mount Zion. So I went there. We were very faithful churchgoers. I should say my parents were faithful churchgoers because as I grew older, I kind of pulled away from church. But it was. I mean, I had a normal childhood, but again, my brother and my sister were so much older that I didn't really grow up with them. So, it wasn't like that I really had siblings at times. It was like I was an only child. Yeah.
Yeah, I can understand what you're saying. Um, Marcella, what are your fondest memories of, or your earliest memories of East Cleveland? And tell me what life was like then.
Well, I can remember as a youngster, that's when Severance Center had just opened. And my mom, we were living on East Boulevard between near St. Clair. So we would drive up Superior and then across, was that up Superior, then we'd go down Euclid and then up Forest Hills Boulevard to get to Severance. Right, so I can remember driving through the area. Oh, and you used to think it was such beautiful homes, and it was a beautiful area and everything. It was just a beautiful area at the time. So when my mom was looking toward homes, and my mom was the type, now my dad wasn't, but my mom was the type. She always liked to improve her surroundings. She always liked nice surroundings, and she liked she was good with colors and decorating all that kind of stuff. So she liked the nicer things. And like my dad was, just as long as there's a roof over his head, he didn't care. It was a home. It served a purpose. Somewhere he slept and took care of the family and went to work every day. So that's how my first acquaintance, I think, was with East Cleveland. And then my parents wound up buying a house on Northvale in East Cleveland, not off right off of Forest Hills Boulevard. Oh man, we thought it was just, the house was beautiful. It was a one-floor home. It was the first time we had been in a one-floor home. First time we had an air-conditioned home, because when we lived in Glenville, they were older homes, beautiful homes. It was a brick home, but it had no kind of air conditioning. And I can remember as a kid, God, the summers were so hot, and oh, I just, but there was no such thing as whole house necessarily air conditioning at the time that I could remember. And so when we moved in this house, oh man, we just thought it was the cat's meow. I mean, it was really some beautiful home. Again, it was pretty much on one level. There was a basement in the house, but it was very nice. It was very nice, beautiful yard. And even to this day, the people that my parents sold the home to, I still pass the home because I still live in East Cleveland, of course, pass the home. And I've been in the home, actually. It is owned by Mrs. Oakley, who is, the mother of the basketball player Charles Oakley. And I got in the house maybe about a year or two ago, same wallpaper on the walls, pretty much the same, because it was quality work. It was quality work. So it's really, it was a beautiful home. My fondest memories were when I was 16 and walking up to Lutheran East when I was going to school. That's one of the fondest things I remember. Then we'd go across the street to Severance. Severance was, the whole different construction than what it is now. And you went there, and that's when you had that indoor mall. It was a whole new concept, and oh yeah, so.
Yeah, after school we would go over there.
Right, go over there.
Right across the street from Lutheran.
Right across the street from Lutheran East, and then we go there and go and play bowling, and then the stores were there. Oh yeah, it was a beautiful area. It was a beautiful, beautiful area.
I have to agree with you on that one. In what ways has the city of East Cleveland changed over time, and what do you think contributed to those changes?
Well, I would think the economy. But the way I've seen the area change is that it's a lot more depressed than it was when I was first, when I first lived here at 16. There's, the housing has not been maintained. The homes have, the lots, nothing is not at the quality, at the level that it was. But I'll say this, even to this day, being here, and I've been a manager here at this location since 1999. So I've been here every day pretty much since 1999. And we moved into this building in 1972. It was purchased in 1972. I still travel the streets and can travel the streets in the middle of the night, and I feel very safe. I don't worry about, I've never had anybody approach my car. Never had anybody look like they were making inappropriate or say the wrong thing to me. I know we've had some people who may come in the funeral home who are homeless and they want a hand out of that. But other than that, and I'm called down here a lot in the middle of the night because maybe the alarm goes off and I have to meet the police here. And I've never had a problem. So I still feel safe. And I'll say this to you. A couple weeks ago, and I live on Glen Road. in East Cleveland, and I have a two-story home. I'm there by, I live by myself now because my children have left the house. I'm an empty nester. I have a 25-year-old daughter, a 28-year-old son, and I had my air conditioner on the second floor, and I fell asleep and woke up around 2 o'clock. I usually wake up in the middle of the night. Woke up around 2 o'clock in the morning, and so I'm kind of going walking around the house on the computer, taking care of chores, and I was about to lay down at 4 o'clock, and I said, "Geez, something don't seem right here." And I looked down the stairs, and I could see a light coming in coming on the floor, and coming up the steps. I went downstairs. I had left my front door and my back door open.
Not unlocked, open.
Open. My screen was locked, and I had a security. I don't have a security screen on my front door. I have a security screen that was locked on the back door. But it's 4 o'clock in the morning. Anybody really at my front door could have busted in the screen, and it's just that easy to get into. It's not like it's just like a locked door that it can't be tampered with. And I thank the Lord. I thank the Lord that I was still safe. But then I felt like, gee, people want to get this bad name to East Cleveland, like we've got all these vagrants and people who are suspect all the time wandering the streets. And I said, I could have been living out in Beechwood, and it could have been a whole different result. So I still feel very safe in East Cleveland. I don't feel like I have to worry, and I still feel good about being here. I don't want this building to ever close. I know we've talked about selling it. There have been efforts to sell it, and I've really tried hard to keep it, for us to keep it,
Now, you said you lived in the East Cleveland side of Forest Hills, and having lived there myself, although I was on the Cleveland Heights side, I was there until '83, and I remember at the time there were a lot of Caucasians, Europeans, whatever you want to call them, who lived in the area and would freely walk at night, when it was dark, and
walk their dogs.
Yeah.
People do not walk the streets, and I tell you, like at Halloween, and I've noticed this over the years, since my kids came up, the kids used to, even though when we came up, we just ran the neighborhood freely. We didn't have to. I mean, I was all over the Glenville neighborhood, with my bike all in my bag, and I didn't have to worry. When my kids came up, it was more hands-on. You just kind of want to follow them to the door, or be more mindful, because you didn't have that real sense of safety. But anymore now, I notice it a whole lot. Parents are taking their kids by the hand on Halloween, coming to the door, standing on the curb, letting the kids, but they do not let them venture. And not as many kids are out on Halloween. But I still see a lot of people walking. I still see a lot of people walking their dogs. And there's still a lot of whites in Forest Hills. Now, when we first moved to East Cleveland, and when I was 16, which would be what? That was 54, about 60, or 70. Yeah, about 70. We had white neighbors on both sides. People didn't necessarily the friendliest. You weren't in and out their homes or visiting, or you really knew who your neighbors were. But there were a lot of whites, And that's one thing that I had, like you're saying, you asked me earlier about how has the neighborhood changed. Well, there are a lot more blacks here now. The population has really shifted. There are a lot more black people, but I'm more concerned about the economics of the area and the opportunities that are being afforded to the students. Now, I think with what's been done at Shaw High School, it's amazing. I think, I was there doing some workshops. It's really, the school's beautiful, and they've done some really wonderful things, making offerings to the kids about life careers and what they can do just right out of high school. The school looks like it's, state of the art, a beautiful school. But I'm just concerned about the economics, the jobs that are afforded people. I still see, and it's very hurtful to me, I see a lot of these young black males who just kind of, you see them sitting on the front porch. It's the middle of the day. They don't seem to be really engaged. You see them kind of walking up and down the block. You don't see them they don't seem to be engaged in a job. And that's very worrisome for me because I feel like they're just not being afforded the same kind of opportunities for a white kid at the same, at the same point in life. I don't see that. I don't see that.
Yeah, now you're touching upon the inequality issues that are faced with any urban community.
Right, right.
Um, how has inequality impacted you personally?
Well, I'll say this as far as racial relations. When I came up, I went to Collinwood for junior high school. And when I went to Collinwood, that's when there was a lot of turbulence. Collinwood was usually a very segregated school. There were only then the handful of blacks there, and I can remember the ethnic population at that time. They were so upset about this influx of black students because we were kind of bussed in from the east side and taking that one bus, that St. Clair bus, out going out to East 152nd Street. And I can remember them, filing around the perimeter of the school. And they had bats and bottles in their hands. And I can remember approaching those front steps, those huge front steps, and them coming after us, storming the school. And I flew up the steps. We flew into school. I had a girlfriend of mine who kind of knocked me out the way, and she got hit by the bat. We were terrified. We were terrified. We can remember when we were locked in the rooms, and because you were afraid a riot was going to break out. So it was that I got that knowledge. I got that experience firsthand. That was really scary.
That was a very scary period of time, and I know my cousin attended Collinwood. She was the same age as you. Karen Davis is her name.
Okay.
She just retired from teaching in East Cleveland.
Wow.
Her entire career. But I can remember how afraid I was. In her father would drive to school, and he just pretty much, he was a pretty big guy, and he pretty much rescued the girls, her friends. So,
Right, right.
You just couldn't just walk to school.
Right.
And, not during those times.
Right, right.
Yeah.
It was a very scary time, and we took the bus out there, and then we, kind of all crowd together to kind of walk across the street, trying to offer each other protection. But that was a scary time, and so I mean, the school has changed. The life population there in Collinwood area, which is not far from East Cleveland, has really changed too.
Marcella, can you recollect a memory or instance when the community of East Cleveland fought for something?
Well, yes, I can remember here recently when they fought for the hospital for Huron Road, and I can remember when they fought here, it was about the same time they were fighting for the post office here on Shaw. And to this day, I'm always, because that's right around the corner for me, so it's very convenient. And we really were afraid that we would lose it, because it's such a resource for the community. And so I go there all the time, and I'm constantly asking the cashier or the clerk at the window, when are they going to close? When are they going to close? Because I mean that's quite a, that's a lot of traffic I think still goes through there. It makes it more convenient. If you have to go across town, it's going to make it awful inconvenient for residents around here. People who can pretty much walk to the post office right now. Yeah, I really like it. I've gotten some friends there, and then you can move in and move out. You have to go up to Cleveland Heights. The lines are so long. They're so long, and I hate it. I just hate going up there.
So now we're touching upon the institutions that are contingent to East Cleveland, the Cleveland Heights area. And so can you elaborate about how the surrounding institutions and cities impact East Cleveland, in addition to what you were talking about, the changes at the post office?
Well, it's going to be really interesting to see what happens with the hospital. I mean, I can appreciate the economics and that the beds weren't being occupied and they weren't being used. There was a lot of money that was being spent to maintain the building. And I'm hoping that Stephanie Tubbs Health Center is able to really help. But, it's going to be interesting to see what happens in the future since there's no real hospital unit here. I had a son who was living in the building. I had to rush him to the hospital. And this has been since the hospital closed, so I had to take him all the way down to UH, across from K. So, it wasn't that much further and that, and we still got served. But I'm wondering about somebody who's been shot or somebody who needs really immediate care and can't just sit and wait to be admitted, and that it's going to be really, it's going to be interesting. And I see they have knocked down the hospital. I don't know what plans they have for that lot, but the hospital is gone. The ground is leveled. It's going to be really interesting to see what happens for this community, because I know the fight again was for the trauma, it being a trauma center, and now there is no trauma center really in this area. I know as time moves on, things change. They say the only thing about change is that it's certain is that there's always change. But I just that was one thing. That was an institution in this area. It had that nursing school, and I know it wasn't being patronized, and it just wasn't, bottom line, it wasn't cost efficient. But it was a major loss to the community, a major loss to the community, and that's why I'm hoping like the post office doesn't leave. And then you had hotels around here like the East Town, and there were some other. Again, this is a major thoroughfare. Euclid, they say, runs all the way to New York City, and it's just sad to see the change that's happened in East Cleveland. I'm glad that the Shaw has been rebuilt, and I'm glad they've maintained that building. But the economics of the city and the people, the fact that people are not being afforded opportunities, and then you've got a lot of gang activity going on and a lot of undesirables. You're going to have that wherever you live, but it's just the makeup. It's just a challenge anymore. It's just a real challenge.
As it relates to gangs and drugs, do you feel that it's more or less or about the same as when you were first moved to East Cleveland?
Ooh, that's a good question. I don't know that it's any more or less. I just think it's more apparent. I don't know that people are indulging any more than they did before. It's just become more of a topical. It's more topical. It's more obvious that people are indulging. But I think that I think people, first of all, choose drugs because they have no way out. And this is their way of self-medicating to keep them from worrying about the fact that they don't have opportunities, that they don't have the funds, that they don't, they can't pay the bills or whatever. But I think it's just a way of kind of keeping people contained and keeping them numb to what's going, to how bad the situation is sometimes. So I don't know that it's any worse. I guess maybe there's more drugs in the community than there were when we were coming up. But drugs have always been there. Drugs have been back since, marijuana's been back since, I've heard since forever. So I don't know. It's that's a good question. I can't tell you I see a lot of it in here. I don't have people coming in that I can, we can smell dope on them. I don't have a lot of that, but you got kids. You got kids in the neighborhood, and I know sometimes they say kids smoke in the bus station, but I don't see a lot of it. I don't see a lot of it necessarily. No, I see a lot of conscientious people, fun people who love East Cleveland, and have been here a long time, like May Stewart, who used to be the city manager, and then you got Mr. Davis, who owns the funeral home down the street. He was very involved in the community. I see a lot of people who are still hopeful that East Cleveland is going to maintain and that it's going to come back to the level that it once was, and still be a wonderful place to live. I don't deal with a lot of the drug addicts, and I don't see them. To be honest with you, I don't see them in here. I don't.
We talked a little bit about the various institutions. Would you like to elaborate? Are there any other institutions? I would imagine by virtue of you being a mortuary that you had a relationships between the churches as well as the McGregor home.
Right,
Yes.
right, right. And again, McGregor has invested a lot of money in developing the McGregor home up there. It's a beautiful, beautiful area. And the churches, I know Starlight here and Bright Star on Hayden, and then there's Windermere United Methodist, and then there's some churches further out Euclid. Um, I, d- I think all of them are probably right now feeling the crunch with the ties that people are making and being able to keep maintain their buildings. Again, a lot of the buildings are not as well maintained as they used to be. Whereas McGregor has a huge, they've got a lot of funds there to work with. So they're doing really well. I was surprised to see them invest that much into East Cleveland. I think it was wonderful, but and it's turned into a nice community area, and a lot of people, go there and they live there. So when in their ailing years, so I even try to get my parents to kind of to look in there. But I do know that there are collaborations that are between the City of East Cleveland and University Circle Incorporated to help develop the area, and they've even put up a senior residence further down Euclid. I think it's at Belmore, where they are building, building. So University Circle has seen a lot of improvement, and they've seen a lot of funding, private funding coming in. So they're trying to work, some things with the mayor here, I've been told, to try to bring, East Cleveland back. So, it's things again will always change. So I'm hopeful that, a lot of the residents will still stay here, and they'll want to contribute whatever they have to do to keep this place going.
Good. You live not too far from the park.
Yeah, Forest Hill Park.
Hills Park.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Did you go over there a lot when you were growing up, or?
Well, as as all mothers do, I took my kids there. My son there, he was playing sports there. He played baseball, little league, and that there. But I'm not a big walker and that, so I'm not real outdoors kind of person. But yes, I was there. I mean, even when we lived on when coming up when I was younger and still living in my parents' home, I was up there and bicycle and that. But I'm not a real outdoors kind of person. But it was a beautiful park, and I have been there. Yeah, I have been there. I know I gave my daughter her graduation party there in the pavilion there, and it's a beautiful area. And I hear about some crime happening around me, but I haven't heard anything real sensational. Not anything real break-ins maybe, but not anything so where people have been really shot, hurt, killed, anything like that. Mm-mm.
Have you ever gone to see plays at East
Cleveland.
Theater?
No, but we were talking earlier about you and Earl being in one of the productions, a couple of the productions. I haven't, again, as one of those things I put on my calendar, I say I'm going to do, and then it gets by me every year, but I know that they do good work there. And we have been supportive of that institution with ads and that, trying to, keep them going.
Okay. Marcella, what is your vision for a future East Cleveland? And tell me about the major issues that need addressing in order to better East Cleveland, the community in which you live and or work, or the city as a whole.
Again, I think that the jobs have got to come back to the area, and I don't know quite how that's accomplished. I mean, we've got this huge medical campus down the street at UH, between UH and Cleveland Clinic. There's got to be a way, and I know they're on the strip of Euclid now. They're building up in University Circle. They're making doing a lot of housing for like medical students and the doctors and stuff. And I know they're trying to pull that into East Cleveland because, again, this is a easy thoroughfare. The bus station, Windermere bus station, carrying people to all points all across. But there's got to be a way to support, first of all, the education system, so that it's top-notch education, so that when the kids graduate, they have a real promise of a future. And they really want to do something with their lives besides, winding up in prison and not having opportunities. There's got to be a way of doing that. And then there's got to be a way of bringing more jobs here. And I don't have the answers to that. I know the political climate in East Cleveland is such that, it just seems like there's a constant fight between the mayor and the city council. And even if they've turned over administrations, it still turns out to be a rather adversarial relationship between the council and between the mayor. I hope that we can kind of transcend that to do what's best for the city. I go into East Cleveland City Hall on a semi-frequent basis. I'm so sad to see how that building has deteriorated. I wish there was some way to bring that building back up so that it was a real nice looking building. I mean, it's suffering in a lot of ways. I'm sure they have all kind of maintenance issues there. The police department, as best I know, is top notch. Whenever I've had to call the police here or in any personal issues, they have always answered. I hear a lot of stories about, East Cleveland, we only got very small departments, so the response time is very slow. I haven't had that experience at all. They have always been Johnny on the spot. They've always been very helpful, very accommodating. Whatever I needed, they were right there to do it for me. So I don't have any complaints with the police department. But what my biggest concern is the kids and the job opportunities. Because if the kids don't have the opportunities, they're going to get stifled. They're going to get frustrated. They're going to get angry. They're going to start acting out. They're going to get involved in not very distasteful kind of behavior with having very few options. That's where my biggest concern is with the kids. And then hoping that the businesses, that the small business owner can keep his place going. I mean, we've seen the influx of some of these larger grocery stores. So the mom and pop grocery store isn't as popular as it used to be. But there's the grocery store. I'm in the process of reading a book. Gotten so far, just a little bit through. It's called Our Black Year. It's written by a black woman and her husband, they live in Chicago, and they spent a year trying to only patronize black business. And what they found out is that there are not a lot of black businesses out there, because they don't have the same opportunities, and the things, it's just not there. So it was a very frustrating but an enlightening year for her to show how we as black people have to support, is critical that we support our own. Because the black dollar only stays in the community but a short amount of time, as opposed to maybe 30, 40 years ago when it was in the business for, an elongated amount of time. I can't quote quite the numbers right now, but it's so important that we support our own, because if the answers are not found within our own community, then we can't rely on the majority community to save us. That's just not, it's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. And if we don't build ourselves up and start trying to stop that, syndrome of trying to pull each other down, we're going to have some real challenges in the future.
The book that you talked about, Our Black Year, what year
was this written?
Was it written, or not? Was it written? What was it pertaining to? What period of time?
You talking about the actual calendar year, or are you speaking of
the period of time in which they actually tried to
purchase, support just black businesses?
Patronize black businesses.
I'd have to go back to the book. I'm not remembering. It's been recently. It's been in recent years. It hasn't. It's not like it was 10 years ago. This has been something I would say within the last 5 years that she did this research, and she was a very well-educated woman. Her husband graduated Harvard. She's got her master's. She's an attorney, and I wish her name was coming to me right now. But she's a well-educated woman. So they consciously made the choice to see where it was going to lead them to support only black business. And what they found us, there's no chain of black grocery stores. There's no chain of black dry cleaners. There's no chain of black pharmacies. You pretty much have the church, the beauty salon, the barber shop, the bar, and the funeral home. And we speak so much as a people. We're so much more than just that. And as we, when Harriet Tubman came along with the Underground Railroad, she said, you gotta rush to freedom. You gotta find freedom. And if you want to get there, then you got to be able to say never take no for an answer, and you got to make those sacrifices to get there. Well, I think we've become complacent. And we've got to, we just got to keep pushing. We got to keep saying, never take it, never accepted no for an answer. Not right now with the election, with President Obama coming up. I'm very concerned.
Okay, stop right there.
Yeah, with the presidential election coming up in just a few months, I'm very concerned with the voter rights that are being tapped. That are being segmented so much now. I'm really concerned that it's not going to be a true election in the sense of being a real democratic election. I think that what I've read about it, and I'm not the most read person, but I'm just saying what I've read, the Republicans are really doing everything they can do to monopolize and control it. And if they can, shut down on people having the ID, the proper ID, to be able to vote. I've been told that in Pennsylvania they've passed legislation so that almost 700,000 people are not going to be able to vote because they don't have the proper type of ID. And in order to get the kind of ID, they have to have the access to transportation, which some of these seniors just don't. And if they're on a fixed income, they may not have the funds to really pay for to get to the transportation. It's a scary kind of election. Women's rights are being really questioned. A woman's right to her own body, to be able, whether she wants to have a child or whether if she's raped, she still has to have this child. And even now with the president, I think it was the beginning of August, women were able to get free contraceptions. If the Republican administration gets in office, that's all going to be banned. It's just going to be all disappear. And I think it's going to be a very, very scary time. And I hope and pray that people come out in droves and that they don't, even though they may not be able to vote on the weekends like we were before. I mean, it seems like all that's just shut down. And people who who can't just leave their jobs and stuff, it's gonna be a scary time. It's gonna be a scary time.
Marcella, I want to revisit something that you stated earlier. When you were talking about the church, you said your mother attended
Mount Zion. Mm-hmm.
Congregational Church,
Right.
which is located on 108th.
Right, Magnolia. Mm-hmm.
And in Magnolia. And now, what was it like? I mean, when you were in that church. About what age were you when you started going there?
Oh, I was a youngster.
You
I
were a
mean,
youngster,
yeah.
okay. Can you remember looking at the complexion of the members and
Yeah.
And
Oh, yeah.
I mean, in
Definitely.
the black community, they call it. If people can't remember the church, they refer to the yellow church.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
know?
Yeah,
You
there were
aware
a
of
lot of
that?
fair skinned African Americans, supposed to be professionals, doctors, dentists, school teachers, lawyers, or what have you. But there was a lot of fair skinned people. And as I got older, I just wasn't comfortable with it. So
Well,
I wound up leaving it.
were you also aware of individuals being told, you can't, you know,
Can't join the church?
yeah, or were you
Or
aware
I
of
don't know
that?
if they were, I don't know so much they weren't told as much as they were kind of influenced that this wasn't the right kind of church for them, or what they say, the paper bag test kind of thing, that just weren't up to, you weren't on the same level. I don't know people actually being turned away. I didn't hear that at Mount Zion. I just know that fair-skinned people sometimes take on a different persona than, and they seem to sometimes feel that they're better than, and I just, so I never really supported it, and I wound up leaving Mount Zion. I wasn't comfortable, and I felt like people weren't really as friendly and open and conversing, and I just didn't feel comfortable. I didn't feel welcome, so I wound up leaving. Yeah, I moved on to Antioch, to my dad's church, and again, I'm not the biggest churchgoer because I work a lot on the weekend, and Sunday is like my day to just kind of chill, and then I spend the day a lot with my parents, having dinner with them. But I'm much more comfortable at Antioch, and again, Mount Zion wasn't a gospel kind of a choir. They didn't have a gospel choir. They had more of the symphonic kind of music, and it wasn't seemed to be reflective. And gospel music kind of gets to the heart. You really feel it. This was, I don't know. I can't think of the word, but I just didn't feel as comfortable in it, and it just didn't appeal to me.
It was more conservative. The
More
music.
conservative,
Yeah.
yeah, more conservative. Definitely more so. More that you would find in a white church than you would find, I would think, in a real African American church. Yeah.
Marcella, in closing, would you be prepared, or what would you be prepared to do to participate in helping to make East Cleveland better?
Well, I have been involved here at Shaw. I mean, I do. I'm involved with a group called the History Makers. So I do every year that I've been over here, last couple of years, to do things at Shaw High School. I'm going to be at Heritage in the end of September doing a workshop. Um, but I most of my time is spent here in the building and working. I have not gotten out to the community. I do. We make donations to the community. We make donations to the churches. I have participate. Gone to some of the churches on Sunday morning to worship. But I'm not real outside of here. I'm not. I wish I were more involved. One thing I would like to see East Cleveland do is to have a newspaper, some kind of news publication, so you can keep up with the events that are going on in East Cleveland, because I know there are things that are going on at the Civic Center down here on Shaw that I probably know am not really aware of, because I'm just, I kind of go home in the evening and or do other things for the business, but I'm not real in East Cleveland as such after hours. In the community, I should say. We do community events and that, but I'm not doing as much volunteering as I would like to see around here, just because I'm not aware of some of the events that are going on. But I would love to see. I know Mr. Brewer at one time had tried to get a paper together, and I don't know what happened to that, but I would love to see it. I know there's a public access kind of channel, but since I don't have East Cleveland cable right now, I don't have I don't have. It's not available to me right now. So I would love to see, more like a paper around here.
Thank you so very much for agreeing to be interviewed for the Voicing in Action project. You have certainly provided a lot of information from an historical content, personal perspective, and Earl and I really appreciate it, as well as everyone working on the project. So thank you.
Well, I just hope there's something that I've been able to say that will be helpful to whatever you're trying to do, or whatever you're trying to accomplish. I just feel, again, very honored and very privileged to have been considered. East Cleveland, again, I hope that this is one of those millionaire row homes, and we are very proud of this building. I don't ever want to leave it, because I think it's one of the most beautiful buildings in East Cleveland, and I love it. I love the building. I lived in this building at one point in my life when I first got married, so I have a lot of history here. I have a lot of history in East Cleveland.
Well, thank you so very much.
Well, thank you.
Marcella, I understand that this building that we're in now, which is where you do is one of
Millionaires.
places
We
now?
got one of three places,
One of
yeah.
three of your
Three
mortuaries.
locations, yes.
And what is the address here? And tell me about the building itself. Any history related to this place?
Well, I know we moved in here in 1972, but before that, it was called Owens Plantation.
What's the address here?
It's 15357 Euclid. We're right across from Shaw High School, right here between Shaw and Taylor. And it was a dance hall before, and they had a lot of people. They did weddings here. In fact, we had a gentleman stop here in the spring, a white man, whose father owned this building, and he lives in Florida now. And he said he hadn't been in this building in 50 years. And he just was passing, he came through Cleveland, and he wanted to come back in here. So he showed us where the dance hall was, how they ran the meals, and where the kitchen was, and everything. It was very enlightening, very enlightening. But yeah, they got this. It's like a plantation. It looks like a plantation with the columns and with the porch out on the front yard. So that's where it came from. But it was for whites. The building was for whites then. There weren't any black people coming through here then. I've talked to people who can say I can remember when it was Owens Plantation, but we were not welcomed here. We were not welcomed here. And again, this house is part of what's called Millionaires Row, and in Cleveland it starts all the way down in Public Square. where all the millionaires lived, in these big homes, really big homes. And I mean, this isn't a home by some big by some standards today, but in that time it was a big home. And they have added on to the house. The building's been added on to, and but there are a series of homes that come all the way stretched from way downtown. And the ones that are in East Cleveland now, there's Cyphala's Bread and Breakfast, which is on the other side of Euclid there, at Grassmere. And I know there's some further down, going toward town. That I think there's one. There's a daycare now, and there's some others that are out a little farther. But yeah, I mean, this was you know, really ritzy titsy area at the time. So it has a lot of history to it, and I mean the wood in the building is beautiful. Actually, this used to be natural wood. It was all dark wood, like you can see in some areas of the building, and it's been painted over. But the workmanship in the building, the moldings, everything. In fact, I was listening to a Kaleidoscope taping last Saturday, and they were talking about the Cleveland Restoration Society making loans available to people who are trying to restore their buildings in and around Cleveland. And if you wanted to do improvements, but yeah, this is a beautiful building. Absolutely beautiful. These are wood burning fireplaces that we don't have in wood burning fire anymore, but they were wood burning fireplaces. There's living quarters on the second floor, and the third floor they had a maid's quarters. There's still a dumbwaiter in the building. There's an original stove in the building. So it's just, in fact, I've even got my, not from necessarily this building, but I've got my great great grandmother's organ. It was a pedal organ that it's an antique, so I hold it here. But I mean, it's just a beautiful area. That's why I don't ever want to see East Cleveland be lost. I mean, I know it's one of the poorest communities in the country, but there is so much still going on in this area that needs to be preserved and held on to because it's got a rich heritage. Ron D. Rockefeller had his own homes here, and all the Rockefellers' homes that they have up in Forest Hills Park now, where all his employees were living and stuff. It's just it's a beautiful, beautiful area. So again, thanks so much, Shelley. I appreciate it.